This is part 134. Memory transcription subject, Governor Tarva of the Venlo Republic. Date, Standardized Human Time, February 5, 2137. Secretary-General Zhao had clambered up onto the stage, wielding a microphone to address the sprawling crowd. I perked my ears up to hear what initial rallying cry the humans had crafted. From what I'd heard, their species possessed excellent speechwriters, with the ability to weave compelling arguments and play to semantics. The UN leader was holding a few note cards, and had a presentation behind him on the projector. Noah walked up to me with a plate full of food, waving a croissant in front of my face. Why did he have to remember my favorite Terran pastry? You want to distract me, don't you, Predator? I teased. The human smirked to himself. It's working, isn't it? Here comes the airplane. I'll send you to the opposite side of the room if you don't behave, and stop trying to fatten my waistline. Ambassador Williams made a pouting face, lifting his visor to reveal what humans called puppy dog eyes. To think that binocular gazes could be changed into an expression garnering sympathy. I shook my head, before breaking off a small piece of the croissant and popping it in my mouth. The astronaut looked satisfied with himself, and delved into the rest of his excessive amount of food. Perhaps I needed to babysit him, before he gorged himself sick. Ugh, humans. I managed to center my attention on the stage, as the Secretary-General commenced his speech. Every delegation in the room was granting the human their full focus. The group he'd been mingling with before seemed especially keen on his words, after the disarming sampler that was dispensed among them. Marketing the prey attributes of Terrans was a brilliant move. Had I known what utter dorks they were during our first meeting, the perceived schism between our ancestries wouldn't have felt as irreconcilable. Hello, leaders of the Orion Arm. I'm not here to present the reasons why humanity is not a menace or a threat to civilization, or to deflect claims that we're bloodthirsty monsters, Zhao growled. Each of you have interacted with us at length, and if you don't already see that as the infallible truth, there's little I could say to convince you otherwise. We're people, like you, who have been persecuted without just cause, precisely like you. We're no one's enemy, lest you threaten the safety of our loved ones, our homes, and our continued way of life. I leaned closer to Noah's ear. The last line seems a little provocative. They could take threatening your way of life as opposing hunting, for instance, or asking you not to eat meat on their worlds. Absurd. Anyone who draws wild conclusions like that wouldn't last a day in this alliance, my beloved replied. The Secretary-General adjusted his visor, before continuing. Humans respect the inherent differences in our cultures, despite their artificial origin. We don't ask you to change yourselves. We merely ask for the same courtesy. We demand not to be changed or altered, for things beyond our control or ingrained over centuries of natural development in our collective identities. The laws we wish to codify as a foundation for this proposed union etch that fervent belief into stone. Please, raise an appendage if you feel that your species was treated unfairly during your uplift by the Federation. My paw rocketed into the air, joined by dozens of others in my expansive vision. Scanning the entirety of the crowd in a subtle motion, I noticed there wasn't a single attendee refraining from lifting their arm in agreement. The crocodile and the Duerton both had wings raised, while Mazik President Cupo flared his trunk to the heavens in protest of early size-based bigotry. The Yodel ambassador was practically bouncing to show emphasis. The tiny, quadruped Zeruleans rocked up onto their hind legs to signal agreement. My own people bore indignant looks, mirroring my raised paw. It was a sea of consensus, detesting the personal effects of the Federation's overreach. I'm glad that you recognize what's been done to you was immoral. We're going to ensure that such horrors are never inflicted by anyone who calls themselves a friend of humanity. Zhao gestured for us to lower our appendages. That anyone who dares to trample another civilization's sanctity and sovereignty is given no quarter, no aid, no herd with us. Our first item to show you is based upon a document adopted by every member of the United Nations, now modified to reflect sapient rights, rather than solely human rights. I present the Universal Declaration of Sapient Rights. The display behind Zhao offered a code to scan relevant documents to our holopads, so we could peruse its contents in our own language. Article 1 stated that all sapient beings were born free and equal in dignity and rights, and were endowed with reason and conscience to act in a spirit of kinship. Subsequent listings expounded upon those rights, prohibiting discrimination, banishing torture and servitude, and guaranteeing civil rights about personal beliefs and enforcement of laws. There's nothing I could imagine anyone finding objectionable. I noticed the Terrans snuck diet in between language and religion as things not to deny rights over. Knowing how human culture is, I imagine that's a new protection added for their sake. The United Nations is open to suggested revisions, for anything you think we've overlooked, that's heavy-handed, or that would otherwise provide you reassurance. For our own sake, we've also issued the Geneva Conventions for your ratification, the Secretary-General pressed on. Should there ever be an engagement or dispute between member states, I want civilians to be kept out of the crossfire. I want some semblance of civility in an affair as brutal, bloody, and barbaric as war, though my true hope is that we maintain peace through this very forum. It would provide humanity sanctity of mind not to worry about wanton suffering, so I ask that you review this document as well. Noah mumbled a comment to me through a mouthful of food. I should think our doubters like a promise from the predators to accept surrenders and treat prisoners fairly, among other things. Also, it shows our intent never to raid worlds and target civilians like the orcs do. Rules of war are a strange concept to us. That there can be any goodness or empathy, when you're trying to kill people, it's hard to wrap even my mind around, I whispered. I'd never imagine Venlil fighting you anyways, so it's a moot point. The final point is perhaps our most important one, it's something entirely new we wrote. The Secretary-General's lips, uncovered by any mask, hardened below his eye visor. To touch upon your discontent over your own uplifts, this document contains a protocol for handling the discovery of any new species. I felt this was an issue we must take with the utmost gravitas. Please consult the final item in your packet for full details. I flicked through my holopad's catalog, landing on the discussed draft. Doing better than taking every child on a planet away from their parents, and crippling them at a genetic level, seemed like a low bar to clear. It would be curious to see the specific items the Terrans had in mind. Hopefully, the other guests also agreed that young races should be treated with dignity, and in the spirit of equality. Zhao commanded the stage. Panels must convene to ensure that any first contact, 1, does not threaten the indigenous culture or supplant it with our own. 2, that barring an emergency event, it must be planned at length to avoid frightening the locals, through careful study of cultural norms and values. 3, that we will not engage in any communications, visits, or exchanges that are not expressly desired by the natives. And 4, that they will not face discrimination for their technological level. Any questions? So you still want to perform uplifts, after everything you've seen? Yodel Ambassador Lalo barked, ears quivering with anger. Why are we interfering with a species' natural development at all? Excellent question. I grant that this is a contentious ethical issue, even on our world. However, to sit back with an air of moral superiority, and allow millions to die of diseases and famine, is to deem these species as lesser, to say we don't care about their lives. Obviously, dumping an entire catalog of knowledge at once is irresponsible, it should be drip-fed, and focused on issues that impact quality of life. Uplifting itself is not evil, as long you're not planting your heel in their neck. I see. I'm still not sure it's a good idea, but proceed I suppose. I appreciate your feedback. Any ramifications of our group's interactions with another culture, at any stage of technology, deserve consideration. The influence we have must be wielded for good. I imagine a first contact would be planned for years. Would anyone else like to voice a question or concern? Durerton Ambassador Koji puffed out her gray feathers in a display of dominance. You claim to care about herbivores, yet you ally and cooperate with the orcs. Our intentions with the orcs are entirely as follows: to use them to strengthen our position in the war, to liberate all sapient cattle in the galaxy, and to dismantle the Dominion where possible. This was seen at Milo, as you all have heard, where we got a UN-friendly orcs commander to soften the Kolshians up for us. That battle has been difficult nonetheless, but it's given us a competitive advantage. And you all have seen the millions of rescues we've freed, in a few months. So you admit you're working with the orcs. I admit we're using the orcs to benefit humanity and sapience across the galaxy. That accusation has dogged us from the beginning, yet no one can conjure an example of us siding with or acting like them. We went to great lengths to stop the raids on the Cradle, Fowl, and Silas, losing human lives in the process. You claim, human, that they're not your friends. We're supposed to believe that predators would choose prey over a fellow predator that conveniently saved Earth. You should believe us. Do you see the orcs are invited to this meeting today? We sought to secure our alliance with all of you here today, not them. While some bargains we've made are unsavory, even causing us discomfort, don't fault us for doing whatever we must to win this war. I want everyone here to survive and remain free. While orcs infighting was known throughout the galaxy, I was the sole leader in this room aware of Isif's empathy test. It wasn't something that the chief hunter cared to advertise, so he wouldn't have appreciated me publicizing it. Our shared goals for a better future were the reason I cooperated with him. Had other parties known the extent of our interactions, they might vote to hurl me out the nearest airlock. I understand your point, though even talking to them is most unsettling. Koji still eyed the predator with disdain, but submitted to his confident words. I think I speak for everyone in this room, in saying we'd never work with a filthy gray. We'll be watching this. Secretary General Zhao nodded. Very well. Is that the only concern in the room? You have the Farsal imprisoned on their own world, isn't that right? Crocodile separatist Nuala squawked. Yes. It was an option that took the Farsal out of play, and allows us to decide what to do with them after the war ends. We can't afford to occupy them, or to do nothing and let them rejoin the war. Besides, there must be consequences. They've perpetrated too much evil as a civilization. I agree wholeheartedly. Why did you let them live? Clear the debris, and bomb them. The Farsal deserve to die for what they've done. Calls of assent rippled across the room. If I wasn't afraid of upsetting peace-loving Noah, I might have signaled my own desire for righteous vengeance. These were people who couldn't abide by any civilization not being under their control, and who ripped children away from their mothers on Skalga. Why did the Farsal deserve a future, after reshaping every species and allowing other worlds, like the Thafkis, to fall? Had the predators decided to eradicate them, I might have felt a dark glimmer of satisfaction. Well, I say we save the serious, lengthy discussions for tomorrow, when the Paltans, presumably show. I'll leave you with a final thought. My proposed name for this venture is the Sapient Coalition. Mull that over, and without further ado, let's get the festivities started. A cheer went up from the more human-friendly guests, as the predators switched the music to a more lively overture. Drinks rolled in on carts, which earned that rapturous reaction from the visitors who were less than fond of the binocular-eyed sapients. Koji, crocodile separatist Nuala, and Gojid minister Kiri beelined it for the liquor, while other guests approached at a normal pace. Glim was also scurrying toward the stronger booze, though trying not to attract attention. I wondered if it was a good idea for the rescue to be drinking. I brushed up against Noah, feigning a look of innocence. Do you think you can beat me in a drinking contest, dear? You're evil. He placed his hands on his hips, and stifled a laugh. I'm kind of a lightweight, so I don't think so. I never understood what's so bad about that anyways. I get the same effect out of less booze. Isn't that a win? Well, humans are all lightweights to me, so I won't judge you any more than the rest of your kind. Come on, let's browse the fun juice. This is a happy occasion, for once. Lowering the inhibitions of a predator would have once come across as a suicidal idea, but I trusted that Noah had no latent bloodlust at this point. We retrieved a handful of drinks, getting into the social mood. The Terran ambassador downed a few shots of vodka, perhaps because of me. It seemed unusual to bring out a bar at a diplomatic summit, but I suspected it was to stifle guests' fearful inhibitions. With a leader's hackles down, they might warm up to humans, or even enjoy themselves. We wandered the floor, avoiding dancing or sitting at a table for the moment. Secretary General Zhao was showcasing a number of games from Earth, a few of which were children's games. Noah volunteered to demonstrate one called Pin the Tail on the Donkey, and tried to rally the crowd as he swaggered forward. Second-hand embarrassment made my skin feel hot, watching him struggle to remove his visor. The UN leader shook his head, before procuring a cloth strip and wrapping it over the ambassador's eyes. Sarah waltzed in by my side. The Paltan delegation has arrived, Tarva. They had the longest voyage of anyone here, but that accounts for everyone on the guest list. Excellent. Stick around for a moment. Noah has been drinking and is blindfolded. I'm sure you want to see this. The human ambassador was handed a tail to stick on an animal picture. It was apparent from his head posture that he couldn't see anything. Zhao placed his hands on Noah's shoulders, spinning him around 10 times. The astronaut staggered forward, lurching from side to side, and extended a searching arm in front of him. The crowd was uncertain how to react to a sightless, disoriented predator, but the braver spectators cheered him on. My quiet snickering turned to horror, as Noah stumbled right before the donkey picture. His face smacked against the wall, and the mock tail fell from his grip. I rushed to his side before I could think, cradling the groaning predator's skull in my paws. The astronaut pushed the blindfold off his eyes, and offered a reassuring smile. Crimson blood was dripping from his nose, sending a jolt of pain through my heart. This put a damper in an otherwise jovial moment. All the security Zhao has here, and nobody's arresting the 2D donkey? It clearly assaulted me. Noah quipped. I chuckled at his goofiness. Do I have to cut you off already? Let's get you cleaned up. I'm fine, Tarva. I was just demonstrating what not to do for the people who've never played. How does anyone think humans are dangerous? I helped Noah up, checking him for any other injuries. Don't try to act all tough. I'll find a first aid kit, Anne. My chastising of Ambassador Williams faltered, as I noticed the complexion drain from Zhao's cheeks. The Secretary General had a hand to his earpiece, and didn't seem to like some news he was receiving. The UN leader quietly muttered for everyone to stay put, before striding out of the room. I shared a glance with Noah and Sarah. An unspoken understanding was reached between us. The three of us tailed the Chinese national, followed shortly after by the majority of the delegates. This feels like what happened at Earth's memorial ceremony all over again. I have to know what has him shaken up, and find a way to keep Noah safe. What is going on? I screeched. Zhao didn't even look back. Stay where you are, Tarva. There's an unknown ship that followed the Paltans from the handoff site, without being seen. What? Is it the Kolshians? Noah's injury was forgotten, and he quickened his pace to catch the Secretary General. All of the delegates are in one place. Most of our key personnel are here. I thought this location was secure. I don't know who it is, but I know it's not a Shadow Fleet ship. More on that in a moment. Our audio recognition tells us it was a Dosur voice transmitting a message to us, requesting permission to land. The Dosur delegation is already here, Ambassador, and the shuttle itself is a crocodile ship that went missing years ago. We jammed its weapon systems, forced it to land in a sealed bay, and ordered the passengers to disembark. There's only 2 life signatures. But you let unscheduled visitors land? I hissed. And I'm sorry, How did they avoid sensor detection? Sarah's tone was thick with worry. Who would know where the handoff was to follow them in the first place? I'm trying to get answers. We need to see what's going on, and how they found us. They refused to say who they were over the channel. The ship's in a sealed hangar, and an entire team of soldiers will be waiting for them. The station's integrity is safe. We're going to sweep the craft for bombs. Those scanners turned up no suspicious markers. That's why I asked everyone to stay where they were, instead of following me. Durden Ambassador Koji squawked with suspicion. You said yourself that it was a dosur speaking, not a Kolshan make, that its weapons are offline, that your people vastly outnumber the passengers, and that a scan showed no signs of threats. What are you hiding, that you don't want us to see? I'm protecting you. After the incident on Venlo Prime, I've been taking every precaution to ensure you're safe on this station. But if you insist, tag along, by all means. We will. There's no predator deception happening on my watch. Secretary General Zhao tightened his fists, storming into the bay. Dozens of guests tailed behind us, determined to see what the commotion was about. True to the UN leader's word, Predator soldiers were encircling a small Federation shuttle. Massive guns were pointed at the landing ramp, in case of trouble. I fitted my paw into Noah's hand, and he squeezed it to reassure me. Military personnel delivered the order for the passengers to disembark, upon Zhao's signal. The tension was tangible in the air, descending on the gathering with suffocating effects. The landing ramp lowered, and I craned my neck to spot the ship's occupants. It was disturbing that an unknown party could track us to a secret location. There was the possibility that they were a scout ship for an actual threat. We needed to assess their allegiance, and question them at length. The Terrans held remarkable trigger discipline, so I trusted the soldiers not to get itchy fingers. A massive shadow moved inside the ship, and the muscles in my legs stiffened with horror. Noah's uncovered eyes went wide with shock, making the veins pop next to his brown irises. The Terran soldiers grew much more aggressive with their shouts, now ordering the passenger to stay where they were. Gasps and screams rippled through the Federation crowd, who shuffled backward. If someone didn't reassure them, this could turn into a stampede. The figure cloaked in darkness was unmistakably an orcs silhouette. I thought about Zhao's response to Durden accusations, shooting down the notion of working with the Greys. Had the humans invited them here? Either way, the galaxy's other predators had infiltrated our secret meeting, and that didn't bode well for the Sapient Coalition's diplomatic prospects. This is Part 135. Memory Transcription Subject, Governor Tarva of the Venlo Republic. Date, Standardized Human Time, February 5, 2137. Secretary General Zhao leapt into action, declaring that human security had the situation under control. My fur bristled from fear, before I noticed that the Terran leader seemed more concerned about our guests' reactions than the orcs' intrusion. A carnivorous predator remained on the landing ramp, and I swore I spotted a dosur using its forehead as a seat. The beast's maw hung open, leaving me to spot a signature chipped tooth. Isif. What is he doing here? This was not a planned visit. Zhao barked. I guarantee my men can keep you safe. I also swear to give a full explanation and accounting for our security lapse. We have nothing to hide from anyone. Please, I ask a few minutes to sort this out. Ambassador Koji was flapping her wings with irritation. I knew you were partnering with the orcs and deceiving us. They were not invited. You can interrogate me to your heart's content, but I ask you to merely allow me to present the facts and ensure your safety. This is the UN-friendly commander I mentioned earlier that went to Milo. I spelled out the truth in exact detail. You each came all the way here, so please, give me a proper chance to detail the facts. Now, excuse me 1 second. I was the only one who dared to creep forward, getting myself into eavesdropping range as Zhao approached Isif. Other diplomats seemed terrified for the Secretary General approaching a carnivore, whereas Koji and the Durerton Shield representatives looked as though they'd finally caught humans in the act of conspiring against prey. The doseur perched on the Grey's head was the object of my curiosity. Who was she, and why was she so serene in the presence of a sharp-fanged predator? "What the fuck are you doing here?" Zhao hissed, echoing my concerns. "Are you trying to cripple the United Nations' reputation? Also, if Betterment gets wind of you showing up here, we could be dragged into hostilities we can't afford." The doseur glowered at the human, speaking in Isif's stead. "We'd like to work together as allies, so your people need to stand against Betterment, not just the Kolshians. If we want peace, it's time for the Arxer to make amends. We want to talk to the delegates, and explain how the rebellion opposes the Dominion." "Is that so? You're out of your mind if you think these herbivores will even listen to the idea of working with you, Isif." "I do not think that it will work, but I have been persuaded to try," Isif growled. "I am not so foolish as to think I could join your union. Would it be so wrong for me to say a few words, and open some channels? I cannot fight the Dominion alone, and I do not wish for this war to persist between us and the Leaf Lickers. It's going to be a nightmare to clean up this mess, without allowing you to speak. Getting them to join up with us was going to require nothing short of diplomatic perfection. Now, they're watching me chat with an Arxer. If I don't get rid of you soon, guests will start walking out of the summit." "Please, Secretary General Zhao. They have already seen me, yes? I wish to say a few words, as Noah did on Alpha. It cannot make things worse." The human leader stood seething for several seconds, and locked eyes with me. I hesitated, before signaling my approval with my prosthetic tail. Zhao shook his head at the ground, failing to conceal that he was visibly upset. The United Nations had put a lot of stock into this summit, and now, it would be spent justifying why Earth was colluding with the Arxer. After taking a moment to collect himself, the primate turned to address the diplomats. "I don't believe I'm even passing this on to you, but the Arxer wishes to say a few words. I can attest that we'd make sure he doesn't set a foot wrong. We will not let him stay at the summit long, but you may wish to hear what he intended to say, perhaps, if only, to pass judgment on us." "I wish to give you all the facts and all the angles," Zhao said. Gojid Minister Kiri looked outraged. "Isn't that the monster that destroyed the cradle? The one who kept us as food?" Zerulean Prime Minister Braylon chimed in. Nuela, the crocodile separatist, squawked with fury. "You should gun that mass murderer down on the spot." Isif stared at the floor, as the crowd moved from a fearful state, to jeers and calls for execution. It was obvious that Zhao was unwilling to shoot Isif, even if it would calm the mob. However, any attempts by the humans to defend the Arxer were going to collapse the summit. I'd told that Grey outright, after his empathy test, that I could never forgive him. That hadn't changed, and collaboration between his faction and the Venlil would stay pragmatic rather than friendly. However, the only way to save this gathering was for me to speak up in the Terran's stead. "Silence!" I shrieked, swishing my prosthetic tail with raw emotion. Venlil were the ones who were the delicacies of his sector, and who were tormented by unspeakable cruelty. I lost my pride and joy, at the age of 6, to Isif, but I say you should hear Zhao's explanation. The dying wish of Elias Meyer was for peace between us and the Arxer. It's my wish now too. President Cupo stamped a massive paw. "Why, Tarva? I want the Greys to stop attacking us. I want the Dominion and the Federation gone. Most importantly, I want the truth to mean something for once in this star-damned galaxy. There is nothing I won't sacrifice for that." Secretary General Zhao clasped his hands behind his back, strolling forward. "Well said, Tarva. Humanity is willing to give everything of ourselves for peace. Look at Ambassador Williams, who went to Alpha despite expecting to be killed. Or worse. Why did you volunteer, Noah?" "I said that if there was a single species like the Venlil, it was worth it," Noah answered without skipping a beat. I would have died for what we're doing here today. I would have gone to my grave, satisfied, for a chance to maybe acquire peace. The United Nations shuts no doors to anyone willing to mend the rift in this galaxy. Before we decide whether to permit ISIF's request to parley, I ask you to lend your ears for 5 minutes. Follow me back to the banquet hall, while we contain our visitor here, and you will hear the full scope of humanity's dealings with the Arxer. The Terran's leader pushed his way through the crowd, who parted in a hurry to avoid the confident predator. I cast a scathing look at my fellow diplomats, and hurried after Secretary General Zhao. If anyone could talk their way out of this disaster, it was the humans. Their silver tongues were the only reason a predator race swayed any allies to their side at all. I would do anything in my power to back up Earth's claims. The first order of business was ensuring that the diplomats would listen to us at all. The Xerulians, the Yodel, and surprisingly, the Crocodile were the first factions to return to the meeting area. Mazik President Cupo, despite his former skepticism of everything the primates did, was coaxing others to agree to the impromptu plan. The Sulian and Iftali representatives herded former neutrals back, while the Dosur delegation managed to stop gawking at ISIF's confidently waving hat. The most staunch human allies won't turn on the arboreal predators, not without hearing their side of the story. It's the others that will mean the difference between a sapient coalition of a dozen or so, one of 40+, or somewhere in between. The rest of the factions trickled in, grudgingly willing to hear the Earthlings' explanation. The Gojid and Tillfish leaders seemed disgusted. The Cradle and Silas both had suffered devastating Arxer raids in the post-human era. The Thafki looked terrified, which was understandable for a species that was nearly hunted to extinction. Recent revelations showed that the Federation conspiracy allowed their planet to fall centuries ago, making that loss even more needless. Meanwhile, Durerden Shield visitors appeared to be returning to solicit a confession from Zhao. "You just proved you'll choose the Arxer over us." Koji stormed toward the stage, ruffled with disgust. "Here's the proof of you siding with them. Humans acting like them comes next. You lied about the extent of your involvement with them." Zhao leaned toward the podium's microphone. "Settle down. My answer to you was the truth. I can recite it to you, since I have it written on these cards here. Does anyone recall the 3 things I listed as our intentions with the Arxer? To win the war?" Xerulian Ambassador Chaosun offered. "Close enough. I did say we'll do whatever we must to achieve victory. So I repeat, my 3 stated intentions were, to use them to strengthen our position in the war, to liberate all sapient cattle in the galaxy, and to dismantle the Dominion where possible. Those are my exact words, and it was the truth. We interact with ISIF to benefit humanity and sapient life as a whole." Koji puffed out her feathers. "But you didn't say." "That's exactly what I said, verbatim. These proceedings are recorded, you can check for yourself. Nothing I said was a lie, or predator deceit. I was quite candid about us allying with them, even naming the specific instance of Milo. Do you refute that claim?" "No. But I refute that a Grey could ever benefit humanity or any of us." "Really? So ISIF lending thousands of ships to fend off Kolshians at Milo meant nothing? He is leading a rebellion against the Dominion, which you and I both thoroughly despise. That weakens the Arxer. The Battle of Silas ended bloodlessly because he intervened. Furthermore, since his uprising began, he's attacked cattle holdings and returned any herbivores he could acquire." "So you don't care about the Cradle at all?" Minister Kiri hissed. "Are you forgetting who fought the Arxer on the ground? There would be no Gojid refugees without humanity. The fact that your remaining colonies have been left alone is because we retook the Cradle and parleyed with ISIF. Again, I'll do anything to ensure your survival as sovereign entities." The Gojid representative backed down, but judging by the bristling spines, she was still simmering. "Having bargained for every Venlil cattle in custody, I could attest to the benefits of negotiating with ISIF. Planting meat-growing factories on Skalga had been unsavory. Still, the exchange was a net positive for my species. Humanity and its allies needed every drop of cooperation they could scrounge up. General Jones had briefed me on the Arxer-Kolshan collusion to perpetrate the war, after assuring that I would keep it secret. It's a good reason to seek peace, and it redirects some of the blame, knowing the conspiracy wanted us to be attacked and butchered. Tell them why the Arxer still exist at all, I prompted. Zhao pursed his lips. I was going to show them tomorrow, but very well, it can be bumped up the list. The Kolshans could have stopped the Arxer at any time. It wasn't just the Thafki's world they let be raided. It was every world that was ever attacked by an Arxer ship. If you don't believe me, hear it from Nikonos' lips. The Secretary-General hastily played the video clip intercepted from private communications, when Chief Nikonos had called prophet-descendant Giznoll over Arxer interference in the Battle of Milo. Gasps sounded across the hall, seeing the two rival powers conversing with each other. Diplomats' shocked expressions intensified, as they processed what the two heads of state were saying. Betterment's leader griped that Isif was promoting peace and satiety with his rebellion. Nikonos' reply was somehow more damning. We need one predator around, and the last thing I want is a fucking Arxer asking for peace. It makes you look good. The Kolshan had spat the words with disgust. I know, it's sickening. A fat, lazy dominion without betterment? The war must continue, for the sake of control. We're trying to hunt Isif down, but he's been elusive, Giznoll responded. The tape finished playing, culminating in Nikonos' assurances that Betterment could continue their raids. The diplomats seemed appalled, hearing the Kolshans endorse the Arxer's barbaric cattle practices. Despite this knowledge not being new to me, it was an infuriating reminder of how the conspiracy wanted Venlil to be weak and afraid. My daughter's death was part of their moral imperative to fix the galaxy. What a joke. Isif seeking peace was a threat to our enemies. That's why humanity works with him. Zhao planted both hands on the podium, and I could sense his binocular eyes surveying the audience. Whatever the Farsal, the Kolshans, and the Dominion don't want, we do. They don't care how many lives are lost. They want to keep us all in this terrible loop, so that they retain their power. Nothing changes the fact that those Greys are people-eating monsters, the Thafki ambassador objected. It doesn't change everything Isif has done. You're right. But the Arxer weren't always like this. Just like all of you weren't always what they made you to be. If Isif's movement keeps Nikonos and Giznoll up at night, that's a damn good reason to keep it going. How do you think the Kolshans will feel, just seeing a peace-seeking carnivore address you? I imagined Chief Nikonos would have a conniption, if we allowed Isif to present a statement to the delegation. My fantasy of the look on his face made me giggle under my breath, earning a strange look from Noah. Learning the atrocities inflicted on Skalga's inhabitants by the conspiracy had turned me spiteful. The Federation's founders deserve to pay for their crimes, and have the crumbling of their ideology shoved in their faces. The unanimous opposition to Isif's presence has dried up in a hurry. Sentiments seem more mixed now, though people like Koji and the Thafki aren't mollified. I express my utmost gratitude for each of you listening to humanity's side of the story. Your consideration is all that I asked. Let's take a vote. Who would permit the Arxer to speak his piece? Zhao asked. To my surprise, Nuela's wing shot up before my own paw raised. The crocodile must truly detest the Kolshans, for what they did to Nishtal all those years ago. The Fissan seemed to weigh whether Isif's speech could have economic benefits. However, when the Nevik ambassador raised a paw, the Fissans matched their rival's vote. Gojid Minister Kiri surveyed the current tally, before hesitantly throwing her paw into the air. Among other assenting voters were Tilfish Governor Burla, the Zerulian and Yodel camps, the Tardi Paltan party, the Quiet Takans, and the Sulian Iftali delegates. There were some predictable parties among the naysayers, the Thafki, for obvious reasons, and anyone affiliated with the predator-hating Duerden Shield. Mazik President Cupo was the most surprising voter against the humans' plea. Qua's leader pledged full-throated support to the Terrans, but he rejected the idea of hearing from an actual monster. There was only so far he was willing to compromise his values. The split was visible through a survey of the audience, with there being a clear edge to those in favor of hearing Isif's speech. I released a breath I didn't know I'd been holding in. Per my quick estimate, about 2/3 of the audience cast a yes vote to Zhao's query. The Secretary-General blinked with pleasant surprise, before announcing that he would fetch Isif. Those who'd voted against this proposition looked extremely discontented. Koji was staring at her peers with a betrayed expression. "Fuck you, predators." The Duerden stormed up to Ambassador Noah, who was nursing his bleeding nose. You say you want peace, you want rights, then you bring the very monsters that steal both of those things here under false pretenses. How many aliens have you gotten killed, dragging them into your war?" The Terran astronaut flinched, and I could tell that Koji struck a nerve with the war casualties remark. It was clear he was also frightened that the avian would attack him and make a scene. I moved in front of my human, resisting his attempts to pull me back. My paw curled into a fist, as I leveled the Duerden ambassador with a glare that could melt glaciers. The rest of the Venlil delegation, minus Glim, rushed to my side, forming a wall in front of Noah. "I think you should leave," I told Koji coldly. Other human-friendly species mobilized into our formation, the unintimidating Zeruleans among the first to stand by my side. Nuala was ready to go toe-to-toe with the other avian species, with the crocodile delegates eager to atone for their past crimes. The Duerden ambassador became visibly nervous when Cupo stepped into her path. The Mazik respected the results of the vote, and didn't appreciate the scathing rhetoric toward sweet Noah. I recognized the irony, remembering how accusatory Qua's president had once been toward humans. The gray-feathered avian turned her beak up toward the sky. "We're leaving. The entirety of the Duerden Shield is leaving. We'll never be beholden to filth like you, and your pets." Koji stalked away, followed by the handful of species from the Duerden's alliance. Lalo, the Yodel ambassador, started cheering and imitating human clapping as she left. The avian looked like she wanted to bite his head off, though she marched off without another word. Secretary-General Zhao peeked his head back into the room, just in time for the Duerden to push past him. Judging by his weary grimace, the Chinese general put 2 and 2 together. The good news was that the Thafki, and other non-shield dissenters, remained present. With the troublesome Duerden vacating the premises, it would lessen the chances of hostile responses to every word a predator uttered. The 38 species still present found seats far away from the stage, and waited for Isif to be brought in for his speech. Whatever the chief hunter wished to say to us, I hoped it wouldn't cause any more diplomatic upheaval.